From Adolf Hitler's bunker, where, I think Norm Macdonald said it best when he said, that Hitler, the more I learn about that guy, the more I really don't care for him. This is Kurt Berglund with the fourth in my series for the APBA Baseball Hall of Fame set unboxing and preview. This is the final of a four-part series that I am offering on my channel to bring you up to date on the set, and also in this one to give you some things to think about how you might use the set. First two parts of the series were previews of the cards and talking about the set construction. Part 3 was about defense and defensive ratings in the set. And this one is about how you might use the cards and organize them for your own enjoyment if you should get the set. So let's get to, I've divided this part of the series into two parts. One is questions that you're probably going to have to consider when it comes to using the cards. And the second one is how to organize the cards in a way that you might find enjoyable. Throwing out a lot more questions in this part than answers. Trying to provoke some thoughts on your part, and if you'd like to weigh in, just put those thoughts in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because in 2021 we'll be doing a lot more with this set, and I'll be talking about that as we go along and in future videos. So lots going on my channel, and you should subscribe to stay up to date. And I appreciate that very much. It helps me as well to get that feedback. So let's get to the questions that you need to answer before you use this set. All right, using the very high-tech whiteboard, I have listed a series of questions for you to think about. I'll make a few comments about each, and maybe they'll provoke some thought on your part about what you'd like to do with the set. The first question: are you going to use the non-Hall of Fame players? Are you going to use the non-Hall of Famers with your project that you set up, or are you going to exclude them? There are approximately, I think I counted 57 non-Hall of Famers of the 335 cards in the set. So there's a lot of them, but you wouldn't have to use them. So that's the first question to answer. Are you going to include those guys, or are you just going to include some of them? We have a Hall of Fame vote coming up in the next few days, and that might influence who you include as well. You might add in those guys. If you're not going to use Hall of Famers, you might include the newly elected, which at this point could be Schilling, could be Bonds, could be Clemens, maybe. There's some others sort of on the fringe. We'll see. Second question: are you going to divide these guys into the leagues that they played in? Is their league designation going to matter to you? American League, National League, and what do you do with the guys that had good careers in both if the American and National League designations are going to mean much to you? So will their league of play matter to you? Third question: what are you going to do with the steroid guys? I know that lots of us have feelings about the players that use steroids or were suspected of using steroids. I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I include Bonds and Sosa and McGuire, all three of which, and Palmeiro, all four of which have cards in the set. But then there are some steroid suspects that are also in the set. People like, Bagwell has been suspected. I think Piazza's been suspected. There are others. What are you going to do with those guys? Next, you got Shoeless Joe and Pete Rose. Shoeless Joe Jackson and Pete Rose, who banned from baseball for non-steroidal reasons. Are you going to use them? Are you going to include them? Are you not going to include them? in the projects that you set up. Both are carded in the set and both have good cards, certainly very usable cards in this set. Next, DH. Does this set strike you as a DH set for the projects that you're going to do, or are you going to have the pitcher's bat? Pros and cons both ways. If you let the pitcher's bat, there's a lot of opportunities for strategy, for double switching, all that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, you're certainly going to get more runs if you add another bat to the lineup, especially a DH type bat. Next is the question of pitching rotations. How many men rotation are you going to have? Is it going to vary with the time period of pitcher that you're talking about? 3-man, 4-man, 5-man, 6-man, as currently is in vogue in the major leagues. Lots of options there, and that'll be entirely up to your discretion. Letter G is roster size. How many guys are you going to have on your teams? 25, 27, 30, more, or fewer. In the case, you could go down to, I was looking at going at as small as something like 22. Lot of options there. Relief pitching. Are you going to use the 3-batter rule from the 2020 season? And looks like it'll be used going forward. The 3-batter minimum for any reliever. That is an option for you. And right along with that, of course, is the extra inning rule. Are you going to have that runner start on second base? Or are you going to modify that somehow? Start him on first base? Are you not going to do that at all? A lot of options there. There is a podcast that Joe Madden is on that I watched the other day where he kind of weighs in about ways he'd like to change some of the rules. He's not a fan of either the 3-batter minimum or the extra inning rule. Although he said he doesn't mind 7-inning doubleheader games because that was used in the minor leagues where he managed, and he likes that. But he was thinking that if you do the extra inning rule, then which he doesn't like, but if you're going to do that, then you have to give him back his bullpen and not go with a 3-batter minimum. So it was interesting. I encourage you to watch that. It's easy to find on YouTube if you're interested. Next, are you going to add players from other sets that might be missing from this set? There are some non-Hall of Famers that you could argue they missed. You could argue that great players belong in the set as well, other than the great players they included, and if so, which cards would you add? Which seasons would you include? Next, are you going to add any positions to the players that are in the set? I'm thinking now there are some positions for Negro Leaguers. For example, Pop Lloyd is only given a shortstop rating, but he certainly played more than a shortstop in his time. He played a fair amount of second base. He played some outfield. There are players within the set who have been given positions they didn't play in the 5-year run that they are carded for. Pete Rose being one of them that I can think of right off the top of my head. Is given a first base designation even though the cards go from, he's carded for the years from 72 to 74. He didn't play first base in those years. He also didn't play second base in those years, but he's given a second base rating. So they add positions for some players, and for other players, they've missed some. You could do some additions there as well. For example, Omar Vizquel played third base later in his career. Rose played first base later in his career. Why didn't they give Vizquel a third base rating? I don't know. Are you going to add those positions or not? Next, which boards are you going to use? The old APBA question, right? Which ones are you going to use? And probably doesn't matter too much. I don't see any R pictures. I may have missed some, but I didn't see any R pictures. There are K ratings, which would, of course, move you toward the newer boards. But you wouldn't have to. It's your call. It's your set. And that concludes the questions. Now let's look at the organization of the set. How are you going to use these guys in the set that you're in, the projects that you're going to set up? Are you going to draft teams somehow? You could do a random draft. You could do a draft of from different eras. You could say, well, I'm only going to do a draft of the players from the expansion era, 1961 forward. You could say I'm going to go expansion backward up until 1960. What are you going to do with the 19th century players? Those types of questions. Are those guys eligible for your draft? Second, kind of along with that, are you going to go with eras? Are you going to divide this period, these time periods of baseball up into expansion or non-expansion? Or are you going to go some kind of a decade combination every 20 years, maybe from 1901 to 1920, 1921 to 1940, 1941 to 1960, 1961 to 1980, 1981 to the present, something like that. You could do that as well. Are you going to go by franchises? Some of these, some franchises certainly have lots and lots of Hall of Famers, and you could use create franchise teams to go against each other. That would be interesting. 20-year blocks of time, like I just said. You could divide up into 20-year blocks. There's one block that I was looking at from, if you go 1941 to 1960, you're a little light in the pitching. I think there's 8 pitchers from that era that are in the set, but you could certainly make an 8-man staff work. Then when it comes to the project that you're going to do, are you going to do King of the Hill? My good friend Justin Bryan did that with a pine tar set. King of the Hill, team that wins keeps playing until they lose. Rotations are in effect for both the team that is winning and the team that is the opposition. And as soon as anybody gets to 10 wins, they qualify for the playoffs and stop playing. And then you move on to the next team, and so on. You could do a tournament. You could set up a tournament. You wouldn't have to even have them be divisible by 8. You could have a play-in games if you wanted to do that. You could certainly be creative in your tournament format. You could go single elimination. You could go double elimination to try and determine the era that competes the best against the others. You could create a season, and if so, of course, you have to ask yourself how long that's going to be. All right, so those are some ideas for organization of your set, and let's do some final thoughts on the set. I hope my series has been thought-provoking for you and given you some exposure to the players in the set and to give you some ideas about how to use the set if you decide to go ahead and buy it. Or maybe you're still waiting for it to arrive in the mail because the mails this time of year, of course, are slow, and with COVID, they're even slower. One thing that you learn very, very quickly, if you haven't already learned that about the Hall of Fame, is that there are certain decades, certain eras that Hall of Fame voters voted in a whole lot of folks, and some that maybe weren't deserving, and players from the 20s and 30s fit that bill. There are a glut of them, and maybe there are a lot of borderline players from those eras. You could argue the 60s are overrepresented as well. And what to make of the 19th century players, as I indicated before, can be a challenge also. Now, including the non-Hall of Famers by APBA did water down some of the problem because they were able to plug in the gaps with some additional players at additional positions, as well as some Hall of Fame omissions that sort of round out the set and to make it easier for you to create teams. However, what to do with those players is a challenge. And I've kind of come full circle on it. I started out by saying we're going to go every 20 years and create the best team possible. But now I'm wavering even on that, and I'm looking at American and National League teams in those glut periods, maybe going that way. And since the last set or the last time block goes from 1981 to the present, if you're doing 20-year blocks, that really creates a 30-year block or more, although really Halladay and Rivera are the only two from the 21st century that are included in the set as Hall of Famers. There are some non-Hall of Famers that sort of dribble into the 21st century, and doing that, dividing out by leagues, might dilute some of the super team component that you'd have if you went 1981 to the present and just picked the best 25 guys. So I'm leaning that way too. Finally, the decision about the Negro League players. Do you have them on their own team? Do you blend them in with the others based on time period? A lot of choices there as well. So it's a fun set. I'm looking forward to getting started with it and seeing how the cards work. I don't know what I'm going to think of it yet because I haven't rolled any games, and I think that's the ultimate test. I like the look of the cards. I like the way they've constructed the set. I've got questions, as I've indicated to you, but the proof is in the pudding, and will they be fun to use when they're on the tabletop? That's the question. So I'm looking forward to getting into that in 2021 and sharing that with you. Thank you again for joining me. My name is Kurt Berglund. Please don't forget to subscribe. I look forward to seeing you down the road in more of my videos. Don't forget to comment with your thoughts as well in the space below. Looking forward to getting started. Have a wonderful holiday, everybody. So long.